I've repainted more rooms in my career than I can count. And after all of it, the samples taped to walls, the arguments with clients, the second and third rounds of test pots, I keep coming back to the same family of colors. Not because I've stopped looking, because nothing else does what they do. Green. Specifically the greens that sit somewhere between forest and bottle, between military and botanical. The ones with enough blue in them to feel cool and enough yellow to feel alive. Not sage. Sage is something else, something lighter, something that became fashionable and therefore already feels dated. Not olive. Olive is warm in a way that flattens. The greens I mean are the ones you find in the background of old Dutch paintings. The ones that have been on the walls of English country houses for 200 years and show no sign of leaving. There's a reason for that, and it's worth understanding. Color does two things in a room. It does what you think it does. It gives the walls a tone, a mood, a direction. And it does something most people don't think about at all. It changes every other color in the room. A room painted in a deep, saturated green doesn't just become a green room. It makes the cognac leather of the sofa look richer. It makes the aged brass of the lamp look more deliberate. It makes the ivory of the ceiling feel warm rather than cold. It does the work of an editor. It makes everything else in the room look more like itself. That's what expensive rooms do. They don't just look good. They make everything in them look better. And I worked on a project once, a townhouse in Philadelphia, federal period, the kind of bones that almost design themselves. The client had been living with white walls for 6 years. Not warm white, not plaster white, flat, cautious white. The kind of white that comes from not being sure and not wanting to make a mistake. The furniture was good. A pair of Knoll settees in aged linen, a Gustavian chest with original paint, a trestle desk in smoked oak. Individually, every piece was right. Together, they looked like items waiting to be arranged. We painted the drawing room in Farrow & Ball's studio green. 1 coat of primer, 2 coats of color, and full gloss. Full gloss on walls is another thing people are afraid of, and shouldn't be. The room transformed not because the walls became interesting, but because the furniture finally became visible. The aged linen on the settees, which had read as nondescript beige against the white, suddenly had warmth and depth. The Gustavian chest, with its faded verdigris paint, suddenly looked like it had always been in conversation with the walls. The smoked oak desk went from furniture to architecture. The client stood in the doorway and didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "It looks like we spent a fortune." She hadn't spent anything she hadn't already spent. She'd just stopped neutralizing everything with white. What white does, and I'm not arguing against white in every context. There are rooms where it's right. What white does in most rooms is make every other color compete. Every object has to fight to exist against it. So a cognac leather chair against a white wall is just a brown chair. Against a deep green wall, it's a cognac leather chair. The green gives it something to lean against, something to be seen against. The deep greens work for a specific reason that has to do with how the eye reads color. These tones are what colorists call complex. They're not one thing. Depending on the light, they shift toward teal in the morning, toward black in the evening, toward something almost bronze in firelight. A room painted in a simple color is the same room all day. A room painted in a complex color is a different room at every hour, and that variety is what keeps it from feeling finished in the wrong sense of the word. Finished like done, sealed, over. The rooms I've seen that feel most expensive, not most decorated, not most furnished, maybe most expensive in the way that reads as considered and permanent. Almost none of them are white. They're colors with conviction: forest green, deep navy, oxblood, charcoal, occasionally a dark burgundy that in certain lights reads almost as black. These are colors that commit. And commitment in a room reads as confidence. Confidence reads as quality. It's not complicated. There's a practical thing worth saying here about light. People resist dark colors because they're afraid of losing light. It's a reasonable instinct, and it's almost always wrong. What a dark, saturated color does to light in a room is not eliminate it. It concentrates it. A room in deep green with one good source of natural light, a tall sash window, a set of French doors facing south, doesn't feel dark. It feels considered. The light comes in and the room receives it. A white room with the same window doesn't receive the light. It bounces it. Flat and even and institutional. The rooms that feel expensive have light that pools. Light that arrives somewhere specific and makes that specific place worth looking at. A dark wall makes that possible. A white wall makes it impossible. There's one more thing about green in particular, and it has nothing to do with psychology or color theory or the behavior of light. It has to do with what green means in a room full of objects that have been made by hand, or grown, or extracted from the earth. Walnut, leather, linen, marble, brass. These materials all exist in nature before they exist in a room. Green reminds the eye of that. Not in any sentimental way, not in the way of putting plants on shelves and calling it biophilic design. In a deeper, quieter way. The room feels like it belongs to the same world as the materials in it. That coherence is what people are responding to when they say a room feels right and can't explain why. I still use other colors. Every project is different. Every room has its own logic, its own light, its own history. But when I'm standing in a room that isn't working, and I need to find the thing that will make it work, the thing that will make the furniture visible, and the light deliberate, and the whole composition feel like it was always meant to be this way, I go back to green. Every time. Not because it's a trend, because it's been on the walls of rooms I admire for longer than anyone alive can remember. On the other thing people get wrong about color, and this applies to every color, not just green, is that they choose it in isolation. They hold a paint chip up to a white wall in a showroom, or they look at it on a phone screen, or they see it in a photograph of somebody else's room. None of those tell you anything useful. Color only exists in relationship to the light in your specific room, relationship to the floor material, the ceiling height, the scale of the windows, relationship to everything that's already in the room, and everything you plan to put there. I had a client who fell in love with a deep forest green after seeing it in a photograph of a house in the English countryside. She painted her living room in it and called me 3 days later. It was wrong. The room felt oppressive. More, she wanted to know what had happened. What had happened was this. The room in the photograph had 12-foot ceilings, 2 sets of French doors, and a stone floor that bounced the light back up into the space. Her room had 8-foot ceilings, 1 north-facing window, and dark hardwood floors that absorbed what little light came in. The color was the same. The room was entirely different. We lightened the green by 30%, mixed it with enough of the base to take the edge off the saturation, and added 2 floor lamps with linen shades in the corners that had nothing before them. The room worked. Not because we found the right color in the abstract, because we found the right color for that room, in that light, at that scale. That's the part the design magazines don't show you. The iteration, the adjustment. The willingness to hold a color up to the actual light in your actual room in the morning, and again at 4 in the afternoon, and again in the evening with the lamps on, and ask every time, is this right? Is this the version of this color that serves this room? The rooms that feel expensive didn't happen because someone made one bold decision. They happened because someone made many careful ones and didn't stop until each one was right. Color is where most people make their first careful decision and their last. They choose a color they like, which is the right starting point. And then they paint it and live with the result without asking whether the result is actually what they wanted. The gap between what you chose and what you got is usually a question of light, or scale, or the wrong finish. And flat paint on a dark color makes a room feel matte and serious, which is sometimes right. Full gloss makes it feel lacquered and deliberate, which is sometimes more right. Eggshell sits between them and is almost never the answer. The clients I've worked with who ended up with rooms they love, rooms that still feel right to them 5 years later, 10 years later, almost all of them pushed further than felt comfortable at the time. They went darker than their instincts said. They went more saturated than the sample suggested. They committed, and the room rewarded them for it. Because a room that commits to a color gives you something to come home to. A room that hedges gives you nothing at all.